So we've seen that the first English colony that was permanent in America was at Jamestown in the Virginia region. Now we want to go on to look at the second permanent English colony, which was at Plymouth. Now, these people who settled at Plymouth were radical Protestants. It's not even fair to call them Puritans because they didn't believe you could purify the English church or the Church of England because it had become so corrupt. So they were called separatists. They believed that you had to entirely leave the Church of England. And they were so hated by the crown that they became fugitives early in the 1600s. They had to leave England to prevent themselves from becoming arrested for their faith. So they left England and they went to Leyden, Holland, for a number of years, but they didn't really like being in Holland either. They gave reasons in their writings of why they were going to have to leave Holland. First, they said that their church was disintegrating. As the older folks were dying off, they were not getting new members. They were aging. They were all heading to the same direction. They were very concerned with the fact that their teenage children were interacting with the Dutch children and getting into various kinds of trouble. So they felt they had to get away from that atmosphere. And then they said their fourth reason was that they really wanted to go somewhere in the world where they could evangelize, where they could convert some people. So they looked at a map. They looked at the map of the New World. Their first thought was maybe South America, but then they chose to go to North Virginia, north of the Jamestown settlement, instead of South America. Now again, these people were very, very religious. You can just look, if you look at the names of the people who were on the Mayflower and you look at their children's names, what you see are all Old Testament names, or you see a lot of names of virtue, like faith and charity and love, things of that nature. And that was actually a practice of the Old Testament Hebrews. If you look at an Old Testament name, something like Abraham, it actually has a meaning to it in its original language. And so they're simply copying the conventions of the people in the Old Testament. So these people really saw themselves as similar to the Old Testament people that crossed over the Red Sea into toward the Promised Land, and so they saw their going over the Atlantic as crossing the Red Sea and going into a Promised Land. They were in fact sponsored, and they were given two boats, the Speedwell and the Mayflower. The Speedwell sprung a leak on the way out of the harbor, and they had to return back. They abandoned the Speedwell. They took all the people that were on both boats and jammed them into one boat. About 102 people on the Mayflower, very tight quarters, very uncomfortable voyage. During the voyage, there was one baby born, properly named Oceanus Hopkins, and one young man almost died. John Howland fell overboard, was rescued in a dramatic rescue effort. When they got closer to America, the thought is that they tried to persuade the captain to go as far away from Jamestown as they possibly could so that they wouldn't come under the jurisdiction of the leadership at Jamestown. They wanted their own independence. As a matter of fact, they realized when they got close to America that they were so far away from Jamestown that they put together a quick contract called the Mayflower Compact, where they all signed an agreement to obey the laws that they would make up. When they got there, it was November. It was the beginning of a very brutal winter season. And in the first month or two, half of their number perished of sickness, cold, disease, those kinds of things. By March, there were only about 50 of them left of the 102 originals. Their salvation really came in the form of a couple of Indians, a fellow named Samoset, a fellow named Squanto, and both of these Indians actually spoke English, which really surprised them. But these Indians had they'd been exposed to English fishermen who had been fishing the New England coast for a number of years. And some of them knew a decent bit of English. Actually, Squanto had gotten on a ship and had traveled to England. When he came back, he was rather fluent in English. According to their documents, the first question that the Indians asked the Pilgrims when they encountered them was, "Do you have any beer?" For they were interested in the fishermen's liquids that they drank regularly. The Indians warned their comrades of the power of King James, of the gunpowder stores that he had, and they were apparently told the myth that he could unleash the plague on the Indians at will, and that caused the Indians there to be very eager to enter into treaties and friendly relationships. Perhaps the most important thing that Squanto did for the Pilgrims was teach them how to survive in New England. He taught them how to plant corn and do some other kinds of farming. And in return, the first Pilgrims really developed a relatively peaceful relationship with the Wampanoags, the Indians that were there, indeed inviting them to participate in certain feasts. But about 17 years later, the first war between the English and the Indians broke out in 1637. But for that period of time, there was pretty peaceful relations. There was one gentleman named Thomas Morton who preferred to reside among the Indians, and he was quite a character, but he was captured and sent back to England as a criminal. They were settled in 1620 and 1630. A huge migration of Puritans came to New England, and Plymouth colony was absorbed into the Massachusetts Bay colony. And that's really the essence or the end of their history, although there's a book about the Plymouth colony written by their governor called Of Plymouth Plantation, a wonderful piece of primary source literature that would be fun and interesting to take a look at.